My name is Amara. And I buried my son on a Tuesday. He was 7 years old. He liked chocolate ice cream that dripped down his chin. He liked pretending to be a superhero, towel for a cape, cardboard mask held together with hope and masking tape. He liked when I sang to him at bedtime, even though I cannot sing. He told me once, "Mama, your voice sounds like a frog with a cold." Then he kissed my cheek and said, "But it's my favorite frog." He died with his hand in mine. His fingers were so small, so cold at the end. I kept squeezing, hoping my warmth would pull him back. Hoping love could reverse death. It cannot. The person who should have been there, my mother, was absent. Not because she lived far away. Not because she didn't know he was sick. But because 15 years before my son was even born, I committed a crime she could not forgive. I fell in love with the wrong man. Not a criminal. Not an abuser. Not someone who hurt me. The wrong man because his skin was darker than mine. Because his family had less money. Because his God had a different name. You are no longer my daughter. Those were the last words my mother spoke to me before the silence began. 15 years of silence. No calls. No letters. No Christmas dinners where she pretended to be happy. No, "I love you" before bed. She didn't see me get married. She didn't hold my daughter when she was born. She never met my son. And now she is walking through the cemetery gates. And I have to decide, does she get to cry at his grave? Does she get to call herself grandmother? Does she get forgiveness she never asked for until death made it convenient? Before I tell you what happened when she walked into that cemetery, before I tell you what I said to her, and what I didn't say, you need to understand what she did to me. And more importantly, what she stole from my son. I met David when I was 20 years old. He came into the coffee shop where I worked every morning at 7:15. Same order. Black coffee, no sugar. And a smile that made the early shift worth waking up for. For 3 months, we said nothing beyond, "Good morning, and here's your coffee." Then one day, he wrote his phone number on the cup. His name was David. He was studying engineering. He worked 2 jobs to pay for school. He lived in a small apartment with 3 roommates and a plant that was somehow still alive despite everyone forgetting to water it. He was not what my mother wanted. My mother wanted someone from our culture. Someone with the same skin, the same language, the same traditions. Someone whose family she knew, whose parents she could call, whose grandparents had all been buried in the same cemetery. "My father chose your father for me," she used to say. And we were happy. "Why do you need to choose for yourself?" I tried to explain. "Love is different now, Mama. Women can choose. Women can marry for happiness, not just obligation." She set down her spoon. "Happiness," she said. "Happiness is knowing your children will be accepted. Happiness is not being whispered about at temple. Happiness is not being the family with a daughter who married outside." She said outside like it was a disease. I brought David to meet her 3 times. 3 separate occasions. Each time I hoped she would see what I saw. A good man. A kind man. A man who loved me without conditions. The first time, she wouldn't let him pass the doorway. "He can't come in," she said. "I'm not feeling well." She wasn't sick. The second time, she sat in the living room but didn't speak. Not one word. For 2 hours, David asked questions. "What do you do for work? What are your hobbies? What was Amara like as a child?" She stared at the television. The third time was the last time. David brought her favorite flowers. Yellow roses. He had remembered from a story I told him once that my mother's mother grew yellow roses in her garden before she died. She took the flowers. Then she looked at me and said, "If you marry him, you are dead to me." I called her the night before my wedding. 27 times. She answered once. "Please," I said. My voice was already breaking. "Just come. You don't have to approve. You don't have to smile. You don't even have to talk to him. Just be there. Sit in the back. Leave early. I don't care. Just please, be in the same room when I become someone's wife." Silence on the line. Then she spoke. "Amara." Her voice was flat. Empty. Like she was reciting a grocery list. "I told you. If you marry him, you are dead to me. Dead people don't attend weddings." "Mama, don't say that." I mean it. Her voice didn't waver. Not once. You will not use my name. You will not call this house. You will not come to my funeral. You are choosing him over your own blood. And blood does not forgive. It's not about choosing. Yes, it is. She cut me off. And you made your choice. Now live with it. She hung up. I called back 26 more times. She never answered again. David's family was kind. His mother held my hand before the ceremony and said, "You are my daughter now." His father danced with me at the reception and told terrible jokes that made me laugh even though I wanted to cry. His grandmother gave me a necklace that had been in their family for 4 generations. But every time I looked at the empty chairs on my side of the aisle, every time the photographer said, "Now the bride's family photos," and no one stood up. Every time someone asked, "Where is your mother?" and I had to say, "She couldn't make it," instead of the truth. I felt like an orphan at my own wedding. The years passed. My daughter, Zara, was born first. She had David's eyes and my stubbornness. She came into the world screaming and didn't stop for 6 weeks. I thought I would lose my mind. But every time she finally fell asleep on my chest, I thought, I should call my mother. I didn't. Then Elijah was born. Elijah was different from the start. Calm. Observant. He would stare at the world like he was solving a puzzle that no one else could see. When he was 2, he figured out how to unlock my phone just by watching me type the password. When he was 3, he asked me, "Mama, do I have a grandmother?" My heart stopped. "Everyone has a grandmother," I said carefully. "Where is mine?" I told him she lived far away. That was not a lie. She lived 30 minutes away. But some distances cannot be measured in miles. I drove past her house sometimes. I don't know why. Maybe hoping to see her in the garden. Maybe hoping she would come outside. Maybe just reminding myself that she was still alive, even if I was dead to her. One night, I parked across the street. I saw her shadow in the window. She was watching television. The same show we used to watch together when I was a girl. I almost got out of the car. I almost walked up to her door. Then the light turned off. She went to bed. And I drove home. Elijah got sick when he was 5. At first, we thought it was a cold. Fever. Fatigue. He slept more than usual. Then the bruises appeared. Bruises from nothing. From bumping into tables. From his brother hugging him too hard. From things that should not leave marks. Kids bruise easily, the first doctor said. Kids don't bruise from a pillow, the second doctor said. The third doctor ran more tests. Then more tests. Then she sat us down in a small room with bad art on the walls and said words that I will never forget. "Your son has leukemia. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It's aggressive." I don't remember the rest of that conversation. I remember the word chemotherapy. I remember the word transplant. I remember the doctor saying, "Family members are the best match for bone marrow donation." I remember thinking, family. David's family was tested. His mother. His father. His 2 brothers. His cousins. None were a match. Zara, Elijah's sister, was tested. Not a match. That left one person. One person who shared my blood. One person who could save my son's life. My mother. I called her 53 times over 2 years. 53. She never answered. I left voicemails. I wrote letters. I sent emails through relatives who still spoke to her. Elijah is sick. He needs a bone marrow match. Please. I don't care about the past. I don't care about anything except him. Please just get tested. She never responded. Not once. I went to her house one last time. Elijah was 6. He had lost his hair. He had lost 15 pounds. He looked like a ghost of the boy who used to run through our living room with a towel cape. I stood outside her gate. She saw us. I know she saw us. She looked right at me. Right at Elijah. Then she closed the curtains. She closed the curtains. That was the moment I stopped hoping. Not the moment I stopped loving her. Not the moment I stopped wishing things were different. The moment I stopped believing she would ever choose us. For 2 years, we fought. Chemotherapy that made him vomit for days. Radiation that burned his skin. Blood transfusions that came too late and too often. David sold his car. I sold my wedding ring, the one David's grandmother gave me. We moved to a smaller apartment. We stopped eating out. We stopped buying anything that wasn't medicine or hospital parking. None of it mattered. The doctor said Elijah had 6 months. Then 3. Then weeks. Then days. Take him home, the doctor said. Make him comfortable. Love him. Let him feel the sun one last time. We took him to the beach. He had never seen the ocean. We drove 4 hours because he said he wanted to see water that never ended. The last thing he said to me was, "Mama, the water is so big." I said, "Not as big as my love for you." He laughed. "That's cheesy, Mama." Then he closed his eyes. And he didn't open them again. He died at 7:43 in the morning. The sun was rising. Pink and orange and gold. The kind of sunrise that feels like a promise. But promises are lies when death is in the room. I screamed. Not a movie scream. Not something dramatic and cathartic. The kind of scream that comes from somewhere deeper than your throat. From your bones. From the place where your soul used to be before someone ripped it out. David held me. He didn't say, "It's okay." Because it wasn't. He just held me. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Same day he was born. Same day he died. I wore black. David wore black. Zara wore black. Everyone wore black. Except my mother. She wasn't there. She wasn't there. The priest spoke words I didn't hear. Something about heaven. Something about God's plan. Something about a better place. I wanted to scream at him. My son is in the ground. There is no better place than my arms. But I stayed silent. And then I heard footsteps. Not the soft, careful footsteps of mourners trying not to disturb the grief. Heavy footsteps. Determined footsteps. Footsteps that had been absent for 15 years. I looked up. And there she was. My mother. Walking toward my son's grave like she had any right to be there. She looked different. Older. Smaller somehow. The woman who once towered over me, who filled every room with her presence, she looked like a ghost. Thin. Pale. Her hands shaking. But I recognized her eyes. The same eyes that had looked at me across a living room and said, "You are dead to me." Amara, she said. Just my name. Like she had any right to say it. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just looked at her. Then I said, "No." She flinched like I had hit her. "Please," she said. "I came to." "You came too late." "Amara, I'm your mother." "You gave up that title," I said. My voice was quiet. Not yelling. Worse than yelling. "You gave it up when you closed the curtains." "I didn't know." "You knew." I cut her off. "You knew he was sick. You knew I called. You knew I stood outside your gate with a dying child in my arms. And you closed the curtains. He asked about you, you know." My mother's breath caught. "Elijah. When he was 3, he asked me, 'Mama, do I have a grandmother?' I told him you lived far away. He said, 'Does she love me?' I lied, I said. I told him yes. I told him his grandmother loved him very much but couldn't visit. I protected you. I made you into someone you never were. Because I didn't want him to know the truth, that his grandmother didn't want him because of the color of his father's skin. That's not, I never." "You closed the curtains. Don't you dare cry over his grave." My voice broke. "Don't you dare. You didn't earn those tears. You didn't earn the right to say his name. You didn't earn the right to be called grandmother. Please," she begged. "Please, Amara. Forgive me. I was wrong. I was proud. I was stupid. I lost everything, my daughter, my grandchildren, my—" "You lost nothing," I said. "You chose to lose us. Every day for 15 years you chose. And now my son is dead. And you want forgiveness?" "I forgive you." My mother's head snapped up. Hope flooding her face. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access. Forgiveness means I won't carry hate in my heart anymore. It means I'm done being angry. It means I'm letting go of the weight you made me carry." I paused. "It does not mean you get to be a grandmother now. It does not mean you get to cry at his grave. It does not mean you get to pretend the last 15 years didn't happen. You made your choice 15 years ago," I said. "And every day after that, every missed birthday, every unanswered call, every time you closed the curtains, you made it again. Now I'm making mine. I will bury my son with dignity. And you will watch from the gate." I looked back at her one last time. Because that's where you put yourself 15 years ago. At the gate. She stayed at the gate. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She stood there for 4 hours, through the burial, through the prayers, through the moment when they handed me the small wooden box of dirt. She stood in the rain without an umbrella. And I didn't invite her in. She's called me 17 times since then. I haven't answered. Not because I'm angry anymore. The anger is gone. It left the day I watched her kneel in the mud and realized she was just a broken woman who was taught that blood means nothing unless it's the right kind of blood. But some doors, once closed, don't get to open again. Not as punishment. Not as revenge. Because my son deserved a grandmother who loved him when he was alive. Not one who cries at his grave. My name is Amara. I buried my son on a Tuesday. And the woman who gave me life watched from the gate. Because some distances cannot be measured in miles. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is knowing when to say goodbye to someone who left you long ago. I love you, baby. I'll see you at the water.